be here in St Helens, and it was lovely to go for a half-hour walk around it as well, trying to find my way here. I feel like I've seen all the sites. World of Glass, Pilkingtons. Didn't quite make it to the Dream, but next time. And I just want to say three things very briefly. I don't know if there's been much audience participation yet or not, but coming here this evening, I kind of imagine that most of you probably have more questions for me than I have answers for you. Not least the first of my points, which is going to be, what on earth is going on in Parliament? Andrew, I hope you've covered that off already.
No, I gave a few thoughts, but there's a lot more to be said.
All right. So. Well, I'll say some words about what is going on, particularly in the House of Commons, but also I want to say something briefly about the Labour Party and the Labour movement, very, very briefly, and then finally something about ourselves here in this room. So just on Parliament first, I mean, Boris Johnson is an interesting kind of Prime Minister who thinks that he can win votes by sacking 21 of his MPs, watching the other two walk out the door, and then Rory Stewart today as well. So the exodus from the Tory party in the House of Commons doesn't seem to be over. It has effectively created a situation where the House of Commons system of governing our country is kind of broken as the situation that we're in now, in that there's a simple rule in the House of Commons, which is that if you want to do something, you can do whatever you like as long as you've got the numbers to win a vote. And if you're the government of the day, you kind of need to adhere to that simple rule, otherwise you're going to come up against some problems. And that's basically what has happened. And just to give the background to that, and forgive me if this is entirely obvious, but the problems really started with Theresa May's assumption that when she went for a general election in 2017, that it was going to be a piece of cake, she was going to have a great stocky majority, she'd be able to get Brexit through easily through the House of Commons, and could essentially focus negotiations on negotiating with the European Union. Unfortunately, the British public got in the way. So when I think sometimes we're accused of being undemocratic, those of us who think that perhaps Brexit might be a bad idea, but I would just say, it wasn't me who called the general election in 2017, it was Theresa May, and it wasn't me who gave us the House of Commons that we've got now, it was the British public. So I kind of respect the democracy of that general election. Which brings us to the point where we're at now, which is that essentially the sort of Brexit dilemma that the House of Commons has been wrestling with is pretty much all on one side, really. The reason why Theresa May couldn't get her deal through the House of Commons was because the Tory party, Conservative Party, which with the DUP did have a small but effective governing majority, couldn't decide that they wanted to have that form of Brexit that Theresa May was suggesting. Despite alternative forms of Brexit, for example, single market customs union Brexit, being put on the table, the Conservative Party couldn't decide that it wanted a form of Brexit that would have been acceptable to the House of Commons. So in the end, because they couldn't decide to get rid of Brexit, they got rid of the Prime Minister instead and got themselves another one. And I imagine that the question that you're all wondering about, given the news over the past 24 hours, is whether the Prime Minister's current Brexit deal might get through the House of Commons. Now, you'll all have your own view. I would simply say this, that if anybody tells you over the weekend that they know what is going to happen as and when Boris Johnson puts that version of the deal to the House of Commons, they are lying. Because nobody knows. Because the MPs who will have to vote on it haven't decided yet. So I think two things are really important. I think the first thing is, as Michael was saying, that everybody keeps in touch with their members of Parliament. I'm very lucky to have wonderful constituents who keep in touch with me all the time, and it's very important that everybody in the room here does too. I just want to say something else about the dynamic between members of Parliament, because I think with the situation that we have, this kind of very challenging situation where the government has no commanding majority, that has required all of us on all sides of the House of Commons to work together to try and find a way through. And I would say that Brexit might have been possibly the worst thing I could think of happening in public policy terms in my political career. But I've no doubt it's made me a better person. And I say that because I feel that I have learned that some of the tribal hard lines that I was brought up with in Merseyside, particularly between Labour and Conservatives, turned out not to be such hard lines. And I think whilst some in our country rightly despair of what's going on in the House of Commons, I think actually there's a lot of people who are trying to work together and trying to find a way through. And I'm happy to talk further about that. I think that working together will generate an outcome of some kind, because it has to, because we're all tired of Brexit, because it's getting in the way, because of all the reasons that Jeannie just mentioned. I mean, if there was a reason not to do Brexit, there was only one reason, and that was the reason, I would do it just for that reason. But there's loads of others. So I think that we have to find a way through, because we can't live with these kinds of reasons hanging over us. And in that, you know, pretty much everything is on the table. And I say again, in terms of the way forward and what is going to happen next, lots of people have got ideas, but there isn't a firm answer that's guaranteed. Everything is on the table. Trying to persuade as many Conservative members of Parliament as we can that a public vote, another referendum, give the public the final say is the best option. That is on the table. Working together to stop no deal, come what may, no matter what, not having no deal Brexit, that is absolutely on the table. And finding our way towards a situation where eventually, as and when we do have the general election, it is done without the shadow of Brexit hanging over us all. That is firmly on the table. So my plea would be, stick with us, go and see your Member of Parliament, talk to them about your views, tell them what you think. It will not be a wasted hour of your life. Secondly, on the Labour Party, I think we've demonstrated again and again and again within the Labour movement and the Labour Party, and there may be people here who are not natural Labour voters, and that's absolutely fine. Everybody's welcome. But for those of us who felt that straight after the referendum, I wrote an article saying that I felt Brexit probably should happen because people voted for it. Actually, it was colleagues in the Labour Party who persuaded me that that wasn't necessarily so, and there might be another way through. And I think that journey has been one that's been good for the Labour Party and good for the Labour movement. And we saw at our conference recently the demonstration of people that they are pro-European, given that we've gone from a policy before last year's conference that was uncertain about another referendum, and in this year's conference there was an absolute clarity that any deal needs to go back to the public for a final say, and that we will be campaigning for Remain. I think that we've come on a long journey together as a Labour movement. It's been difficult, it's been challenging for all the reasons that Mike mentioned earlier, but we're there. And I'll just say one further thing on the Labour Party and Labour movement. It's a pleasure to be here with Michael. I remember first listening to you talk straight away after Brexit and thinking, what have we done? And actually the thing that has given me faith that we can get through this has been in many ways the broader Labour movement that has for a long time understood, cared about and paid attention to the issues of the island of Ireland as the rest of the body politic in Westminster has not. Not least because from a practical perspective in the northwest here, a lot of our unions are organised on northwest and Northern Ireland basis. And actually that relationship of strength has meant that we have found a way through, and we will find a way through, because we are pro-Europeans. And I would just say to Andrew as well, as you're here, I think you might be going shortly, but before you do, I would say that you were one of those people right at the very beginning, when I was doubtful about whether we could ever say that Brexit shouldn't happen. You always said, it's a really bad idea and we should just try not to do it. And I should have listened to you sooner, but I
should say I haven't noticed any tone of uncertainty in my anything whatsoever.
No, I was uncertain at the beginning, but the Labour movement, I think, has found its strength and will continue to do so. Finally, and I'll shut up in a second, I just want to say something about us here, because It's really, really good to be in a room full of people who, you know, this specific bit of Merseyside, of the northwest, is not my specific bit, which is the Wirral, but it's really, really good to be in a room full of people. Is anybody not from the north? Is there anybody who's actually from the south? Right. Okay, you're very welcome. It's really good to be in a room full of northerners. You know why? Because I am sick to the back teeth of being told, I am sick to the back teeth of being told by people from Westminster, from London, from the home counties of England, that northerners love Brexit. I am sick of being told that I should understand that we have a populist kind of politics going on with Boris Johnson and Donald Trump over the pond, and that if we want to win in this political environment, we have to understand that we've lost to the populists and that the great unwashed of the north of England will not put up with it unless we accept Brexit. And at this point, I have to say to those people who say this to me, you do realise I am northern. And, you know, it's a question that really troubles me, actually. How do we answer the populists? Because we know whether it's Donald Trump or Boris Johnson. You know, Donald Trump might be the kind of American sort of version of this phenomenon, and Boris Johnson might be the Eton-educated version of this phenomenon. But we just know that these are people who are prepared to say absolutely anything, in order to get division. We saw that in the House of Commons last week. They're prepared to say absolutely anything. And I think some people might say, okay, how do we respond to that? Should we be prepared to say absolutely anything back? Should we separate those people off and say, those people are, they're the conspirators, they're the ones, you know, whether it's the Tory party or whatever, should we point at them and accuse them in the way that they point at us and accuse us? Because should we buy into this idea that politics now is not about public policy, it's not about the stuff that we've just heard about health policy, or no doubt what Michael told you about the legal framework that underpins all of our rights and all of our ability to get business done in this country? Should we just forget all of that and play into the idea of identity politics? And to a certain extent, I have some sympathy with that, because, as I said before, I'm a proud northerner, I'm proud to be from Merseyside, I'm proud to be from the Wirral, I'm proud of my family that brought me up here to know that a railway workers' family in Merseyside has more in common with a railway workers' family in Barcelona or Turin than we do with very rich people in our own country. I'm proud of that sense of identity, and it informs my politics. However, if we in this room give in to that simple tribal batter each other to death at the ballot box, you know, just do each other in, if we in this room give in to that, then we'll never get the kind of politics that I think the British public really want to see, which is collaborative, which is listening, which is about showing there's another way of moving our country forward, and that detail matters and the boring stuff matters, and that whether or not you can find a way to get cancer research organised properly across borders when there's a tiny number of rare cases, that actually matters because it saves lives. So my final point is that we should be proud of who we are, that as a pro-European and a northerner, and somebody who considers himself an absolutely proud plastic scouser, there's nothing wrong with Birkenhead. we should trumpet our identity, and we should be pro saying who we are and what we believe in. But it has to be a kind of inclusive identity that says it doesn't actually matter where you're from in this country, it doesn't actually matter where you're from in the continent of Europe. If you're prepared to work with us, get things done, actually improve people's lives, then you can be a part of this movement and a part of this campaign. And it's that kind of inclusive identity politics that I think will beat the populism that is harming us now. Thank you.